Hello, ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys. You are now entering Season 2 of the Swan Hockey Podcast. Swan Hockey is flying around the junior hockey world one episode at a time. You'll experience things dreams are made of, as well as things of terrible nightmares. Strap in, hold on, and enjoy the ride. And now, Swan Hockey.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Swan Hockey. We are in Season 2. I am Eric Swanek. Before we get into this, we have our upcoming junior hockey session in the Discord. It is free. The topic is going to be strategically navigating the off-season and landing a roster spot. You can join the session for free. Simply hop into the Discord, go to the events, mark yourself as interested, and I will see you there this upcoming Tuesday, April 7th, 7 p.m. Eastern. This episode, we got Bill Underwood back. Bill, what's going on?
It's typical April. You know, you're getting into the junior playoffs and youth tryout season, so always a wild time.
Yep, that's for sure. You haven't been on in a couple of weeks, and since you were last on, it's like a whole new world. We got this craziness with, this ongoing battle between the North American Hockey League and the USPHL, and it's pretty crazy. And I want to get your take on it as a OHL scout, with Kitchener Rangers. What do you think about all this?
Well, I think basically it's a matter of teams, they're trying to obviously protect certain aspects of their program. And I think really in the end, though, the impact of it is not what people think it is. Because most players will go to the NAHL first, then comes the NCDC. Even an NCDC guy was saying that to me the other day, that they come to the NCDC from the NAHL, and there's nothing in the NCDC that says you can't go to NAHL camp. And as far as mid-season recalls go, it would impact that, but there aren't many of them. There's almost none. The way it almost has to happen is it has to be an NCDC team that has a relationship with a NAHL team, and they might bring a guy up for something then from NCDC. However, again, there are very few teams that are that way, and it's something that's very isolated. Even with those teams, you don't see it happen often. That a guy is called up from the NCDC team, the NAHL team, they usually have common ownership, and honestly, they don't want to mess with the NCDC team either. They want both to win. So they're not going to, the number of players that actually truthfully impacts the junior level is minimal. And when I say the word minimal, I mean minimal.
Well, and for anyone that, in case you haven't seen, so the North American Hockey League put out a rule, within the last week, saying that any player that plays in a junior hockey league that is not sanctioned by USA Hockey that operates in the United States, if they play an exhibition or regular season game in one of those leagues on or after September 1st, that player is no longer eligible to play in the North American Hockey League for that current season. So basically, if you play in the USPHL, including the NCDC or the EHL, you're out. They're basically saying if you go there, don't come back. And it's, I understand what they're trying to do. I don't necessarily think that this, I don't think this was the correct execution of it. And I mean, who knows how much it's going to work, if much at all. To your point, Bill, I think majority of the players in tier 3 will probably be unaffected, but it's just, the thing that I don't like about it is that they're trying to force, and again, so this is more about trying to get players, in my mind, this is more about trying to get players to choose the NA3 and to stay in U18, because there's I think they're very worried about players choosing to play NCDC over U18, being that there's NCDC in many different markets now. We're not going to get into the whole U18 NCDC, or U18 versus tier 3 or versus NCDC debate today. We had that debate in episode 39 and in episode 41. So if you guys want to check that out, feel free to go back and check that out. So, but for me, I think that's a lot of what the North American Hockey League, and who knows, maybe with some influence from USA Hockey, is trying to control. They're trying to make players choose NA3 or U18 over some of these other options. And the thing that I don't like about it is that they're trying to make you choose based on repercussions if you don't. Where I would like to see them say, hey, how can we build something that players choose on their own want to be here?
Well, it's business stuff. It's like most things in hockey, it's business. We've seen this stuff happen where players in Europe have been threatened, you don't make the national team if you don't stay in our national league, that sort of thing. It's as old as the hills. And the thing about it is really, I think the big concern is all the new tuition NCDC teams, because there's really not, really a kid have a chance to play non-tuition NCDC. It's going to be a different scenario. They're afraid of the tuition teams. And the problem is, what people have to understand is these are important revenue things for junior teams. NA3 that helps pay for their NAHL teams. Most of these NAHL teams don't have enough draw, don't have enough sponsorship to make it without ancillary revenue. They have to have these additional sources. And 18s can be also. And remember, 18s, you're not just talking about one 18s team. These teams usually have a premier and an elite 18s. And if you have the numbers diminished, it suddenly is going to mean, different revenue, and it could mean, certainly mean lesser hockey, a lower level of hockey, but also you could have some revenue loss. And how many kids will come to tryouts? You could lose the number of kids coming to tryouts because they'll say, I have no chance at this, so I'll go play tuition NCDC. So the real worry here, I think the concern are the tuition NCDC teams. And non-tuition teams, they're always there, and that's not going to change. That's as old as we've had these two leagues going against each other. But the non-tuition teams you're getting now in NCDC, that's a relatively new thing. And now you have how many coming in with two entire new conferences. There's a definite worry, and you have and also the EHL is there, though the EHL, the NAHL has never done anything, has never been overly concerned about the EHL. But now you're in a scenario that you have these teams come in. It's a little bit different. The EHL is the EHL. The NCDC is claiming we're part of the NCDC, which they are, but they really aren't. They're not the same caliber of play. It's not the same type of play as going to the Atlantic NCDC. You're dealing with a whole different world. But there is a concern, and it's a revenue stream concern, and that's what it is. And again, it's very typical in hockey, and USA hockey in particular, because it's all tuition-based here. And all a tuition-based thing is fragile. And the old days when you just charge enough tuition to cover team expenses are long gone. These become profit-seeking entities. They become large entities. So now it's dollars and cents. The days where hockey was the main decision, and to be honest with you, the players are the main reason why decisions are made in hockey. That's long gone, and it always has been to a degree, but it's gotten increasingly worse now with all the money involved. It's changed so much, and so to say how many of these decisions are based on hockey, they're generally based on more tuitions.
Well, and it's interesting too, because, there's people out there that feel that this rule was created to help support the NA3 owners, which makes sense. Like we could see how that methodology lines up, like how people could, see that. But the interesting thing is the players that, in terms of the NA, the players that are right on the verge of cracking an NA lineup, they're playing in the tuition-free part of the NCDC, right? And even if they're on a tuition team in the NCDC, the tuition teams in the NCDC still have to have 6 players rostered playing for free, right? So the guys that are really like on the verge of playing in the NA, they're playing free hockey in the NCDC. So now, like, what happens there? So now you tell that kid, hey, you got to come play in the NA3 or else. And they're trying to help the owner of the NA3, but now that kid's going to be coming, like, wanting to play for free. So is it helping the owner to have that kid, right? Or is this more about getting the lower end guys that are uneducated and getting those guys to go pay to play, to pay that NA3 owner? So it's kind of that's why like it's just not well thought out, because again, the target audience that this rule might affect, those guys play for free.
Well, I don't think it is those players they're looking at. They're looking more at keeping the NA3 getting tuitions. They're not worried about the guys, that are high end guys are playing in the NCDC. Look, those guys still can move up to the NAHL the next year, because this thing is just during the year you can't be brought up.
Right.
And so it doesn't have that impact in the future. And the player is going to impact mostly to be that kid that's not really going to play for that tuition-free NCDC team. He's going to be going to an NCDC team, and he's a rank and file NCDC player in one of the tuition teams, not one of the good teams, one of the tuition teams who might have an NA3.
Well, that's who you're saying that this rule will ultimately, those are the guys that are ultimately going to, I don't want to say fall into the trap, but like those are the guys that are going to, I guess that maybe are more going to start heading over to the NA3. But on surface level, what the rule, on the outside, I guess tries to show what it's about. Like, oh, you can't play in the NA if you're playing in one of these other leagues. Well, but the guys that are closest to being able to be ready to play in the NA, those are the tuition-free guys, right?
But
so on surface level, they're saying, oh, we want to get those guys over to the NA3. Well, now what? Those guys don't pay tuition and they don't want to pay tuition. So now, are you expecting the NA3 owner to let those guys play for free? Are you expecting those guys to just pay $10,000 or $12,000 instead of playing for free? Or is that just the mask of this rule? And it really isn't even about that. It's just about getting anybody that'll listen over into the NA3.
That's what it's about, the second. Because at first, those players it won't impact. Because first of all, again, NCDC recall during the season, NCDC doesn't happen. Most players know that. It really doesn't happen.
Well, I had a coach the other day told me that he said in the Atlantic Division, they probably get maybe one or two a year per team.
Well, that's it.
That goes
that's what I'm saying. I wouldn't even say per team. I say one or two. That would probably be about accurate, if that many. I say. So again, if that many, and those players, guess what? They're mostly from a team like Mercer, who's with a team that is in the NA with Maryland. It's not the independent, in quotes, player that's moving up to the NAHL typically from a team that has no affiliation with the NAHL. It typically isn't going to be that, and the number is minimal. It's like I use the word minimal. I said minimal. I mean as in not even dozens. You're talking about a very small number of players. And so therefore that impact level is not just extremely limited, it's excessively limited. And what it used to, like I say, it's something that it's just, I think the target is to protect the NA3 from losing massive guys, an entire NA3. Look, those new NCDC teams are not really NCDC teams. They are USPHL teams. And what they're afraid of is you may have an en masse defection from NA3 over to go to these tuition NCDC teams. They're afraid of a massive defection of NA3 players. That could happen. Yeah, you have a tuition playing NA3. Where are these NCDC tuition teams going to get players? You think about it. They're going to be tier 3 players. It's going to be a tier 3 league. Those teams are. So they're going to get players from tier 3 hockey. NA3 is tier 3. And so they are afraid of losing their tier 3 players over to these new teams. The teams like the Hitmen and Mercer and PAL, they don't have to worry about that because it's something that is going to happen naturally. The players that don't make their team this summer will go play for them. And then next year, we'll see you next year. They're not even concerned about that. They can always find hockey players to recall when there's an injury, and they can always find players that'll be bouncing around here, there, and everywhere. That they can always pick up. They always are picking up other teams' cuts, USHL cuts, all that. There's no worry about the supply of hockey players to call up during the season. So as a minimal number of kids are impacted with the real NCDC teams, it's the new NCDC teams that are worried about coming into existence where's going to be their talent source? Links like the NA3. And since they say NCDC, it sounds better than NA3 because, oh no, we're part of the real NCDC. Well, you are and you aren't. And enough people buy into the Kool-Aid saying we are a part of it. You really aren't. It's really a lower level. You're playing a league that the schedule is a low-level schedule. Your chances of winning any championship in that league are worse than minimal. So, but still you have a Kool-Aid of, hey, I'm in the NCDC. I'm paying tuition, but I'm in the NCDC. Isn't that cool? As opposed to NA3, which doesn't sound as good. And you will have people that keep up with the Joneses thing. So they're afraid of the NA3 being decimated, which could happen. That's a very reasonable thing. But the high-end players in the non-tuition NCDC team, I can't emphasize enough. There's a minimal, very high. I talk to NCDC people too. There's going to be a minimal effect on that. The effect will end up being, and I talk to NAHL people. It's going to be a minimal effect. But so in the end, who is this for? This NA3, and to a degree, 18s. But the NAHL itself, 18s. Can play a role, yeah, because some of these NAHL teams own 18s teams, and they don't want to lose tuitions. And remember how 18s works. You usually have that elite team who subsidizes, at least in part, the premier team. So if you're having numbers diminish and you make afford your elite team, that's not a good thing, because suddenly you're losing revenue. Again, it comes back to revenue. The primary target would be that NAHL3. They're afraid of the NAHL3 being decimated, and it would lower itself in caliber. And may it run short on players? It could. Yeah, you could be in a situation like that. You know, people always think you'll never have a shortage of players to play junior hockey, and you're right up to a point. But you do reach a point where, yeah, there is a breaking point, and you certainly might not have the same number of players in tryouts, and the league may lose what little luster it already has, and then you're suddenly in a scenario where the NAHL3, and let's be honest, the NAHL3 really is, it's a revenue stream for NAHL teams. It's not as much a real developmental system. They'll say it is to a point, but no, I'd say most NAHL players are not NA3 players, because like I know when I send a player to a NAHL team, I'm not sending them there for NA3. That's not that is like you might as well just say go look elsewhere, because I don't want them playing in NA3.
Well, so, and like the NAHL's at the top of the tier 2 totem pole with the BCHL, right? It's like, that's the other thing. Like, it's kind of like a double-edged sword, because like the NAHL's a great league. Like, they built a really great league, and it's a very high caliber tier 2 junior A league. So like that jump from the tier 3 level to the top of the tier 2 level, it's a big jump. And if the NAHL wasn't as good as it was, you would see more, up and down movement. So it's kind of like a double-edged sword. They did a great job building a tier 2 league. And, I think they got to put that same kind of care into building a great tier 3 league. And, again, it's not going to happen overnight, but like, I think like there has to be, like I said, I would like to see things put in place that make players want to play somewhere instead of trying to handcuff guys. Like that's what I would like to see. And, I also think that I think they're going to come up with, or very well could come up with, some type of escape plan, because I kind of think you need one. Like Hockey Canada has had something similar to this in place for a long time. And, they've gone back and forth, I guess, in terms of like what appeals and everything. I think we very well could see some type of appeal process put in, like where the NA says, okay, if you can regain, like you can get your eligibility for the NAHL reinstated, but you got to play 5 games or 10 games or X amount of games in the NA3 first. Like, I think it's not impossible that we see something like that shortly.
Well, if it's about hockey players, it might be, but it's nothing to do with hockey players. This is NHL, WHA stuff. If people can remember back that far, there's a war. And the bottom line is a business war. It's not a hockey war. It's a business war. And the fact of the matter is again, the decisions, that would be a decision made for hockey players. But since when do we see any decisions made today for hockey players? They're made more for businesses, for the dollars and cents at the top. And again, American hockey is built on tuition. It's something that you don't have massive sponsorship. You don't have massive crowds. You're living and dying off of tuition pretty much. And these camps they have in the spring. Why do you have 200 players coming to a camp for an ostensibly junior A team? I mean, that's insanity. And then have pre-camps before that. You have a chance of making it. You're just bringing kids in to pay a lot of money to be in the end, shot down. You're making a ton of money off of camps and stuff like that. In OHL, do we have those big camps? No. We have a rookie camp, which will be about 35 players. Our draft choices, affiliated players, and a few select free agents. You don't have to pay for it. You come there, you don't pay, and it's 35 players. 35 players or so. Then we have our final camp, which brings our veterans in. And if you do the math, our veterans will probably have 15 or 20 returning. So where are those other kids coming from? They were in rookie camp. So in other words, a large percentage of rookie camp kids are going to the final camp. And even when you look at the percentages of that camp that make the team, again, it's going to be a little over 20 players and maybe 35. It's a serious hockey tryout scenario. It's a serious training camp. And again, nobody pays a dime. Now, contrast that with the United States. You'll have 100 to 200 kids in camp, and you have pre-camps before that, then the main camp, in quotes. Then you go to your final camp, And like I say, in the end, you're paying $500 a shot. A lot of these camps. Think about do the math on how much money these teams are making. If you hold them up pre-camps and whatnot, kids. You can walk away with a lot of money as what it boils down to. And so it's all about money. It's a farce, those camps are. Unless you're I shouldn't say a farce, but for most of the players there, it's a farce. Not every single player, but it's a farce for most. Again, if you want to get realistic,
you're saying the like mindset or the setting that the players are going in there, what the players are thinking because of what a lot of them were told, their expectations or whatnot, or their perception of what they're walking into, that's a farce, right? Like me personally, I think the camps are great that they exist because it gives players that are on the outside, it gives them a chance to, show what they got. I just don't like the way that a lot of them are presented with, we saw you, we love you, we think you're going to make the team, just come here and pay $500 and they got 200 kids. I mean, it's just crazy. And it's just so funny too, because and I'm sure you've experienced the same thing, Bill, where you have these teams that they need 200 players at main camp, can't make a decision without 200 kids. And then when it comes time for training camp where they're paying the bill, 35, 40 guys most, all of a sudden they don't need a large amount of players. Now they can make decisions just fine.
The point is that in those main camps are exactly that. About 40 players is worth going to, because for those 40 players, you do have a chance. You do have a shot.
100%.
But however, it means about 160 don't. And for some, okay, it's a junior experience. For some younger kid, it's not bad to get a taste of it and see what's happening. But for the older kid, your 18, 19-year-old player, for the most part, you're not a candidate for the team. And of course, it gets worse in the USHL, where they don't sign free agents typically, unless you're a high-profile free agent. So they're bringing in, these 100 plus 200 kids to a camp, and really, in reality, the only people that have even a remotest shot really are their returnees and their draft choices that they have in that camp. So again, it's a moneymaker. They don't have the revenue in those leagues, so they have to make up somehow, and that's part of how they do it. And so again, it's all a business thing. And like this new edict by the NAHL is a business decision. Hockey has nothing to do with it. And even you look at how a lot of the way hockey is structured. What are they structured this way for? For tuition, have more teams for more tuition. You don't need the number of teams we have down here as a feeder system, for any reason but tuition. You think about old days, we used to have one combined level of midget. Now we have 3 levels of it. And part of that is tuition. It's a matter of you suddenly can have you go from having 1 team or 2, maybe, like we used to have the National American Conference. Now you go to what? You can have at least 6. You can have a premier and elite at each level. So suddenly you've sat there and increased your tuitions. You added you're 3 times of what it used to be. So you're suddenly making a lot more. What I was saying, you get 6 times what you used to, 3 times. You have 2 teams typically. So you're getting to tuition. And it's all about tuition, all about dollars and cents, and all about the fiefdom of dollars and cents. Does the NCDC need to have all those teams? No, they don't. It's a dollars and cents thing they're doing. In the end, they're looking to kill off EHL. There's a little question about that. And they're also looking to sort of control that level of hockey. But is it a decision for hockey's sake? No, it isn't. And just like some of the EHL decisions, they were not about hockey. They were more about business. You don't. If we're concerned about hockey, leagues number 1 would be a lot smaller. You wouldn't have the leagues you have today, an indefinite expansion. You wouldn't do that. You'd have you try to keep the caliber strong. Like in major junior, we're not bullish on expansion. We expand once in a great while. We're having another expansion coming up soon because more players are available. But note, that's why we're expanding. We have more players available. USHL is not expanding infinitely. They understand they want to keep some degree of quality and quality of franchises. When you get this infinite expansion thing, it has nothing to do with hockey. It has to do with dollars and cents and business. And why does Major Junior Hockey and USHL feel that way? Because they want to protect their brand names. Their brand name is an important thing to their business, a very important thing, an important thing, the whole fiber and structure and philosophy of it. Other leagues don't have that real dedication to quality. They're looking to make money, and making money means indefinite expansion, really. Unfortunately, it seems to be. That, and of course, the other problem we have here is, particularly in the U.S., is that if you don't expand, what happens? Well, somebody comes in and just starts a new league, and that happens routinely too. Junior can't make the team, daddy will go start a new team or a new league. And that's what happens continuously. We have all this proliferation of new leagues and proliferations and new conferences and whatnot. Most of them are not very good, but again, find kids. As long as you can find kids to go line up and pay tuition, you can do it. That's what it comes down to, and they will do it. Is it building better hockey? Is it helping hockey? No, it's building a lot of bad hockey. Is it helping hockey? Not overly, because we used to have this thing called in-house leagues that would keep players involved and engaged and enjoying playing the game. Now, in-house leagues, in-house leagues are becoming real leagues. That's the frightening part.
Yeah, well, I was going to say before, like you mentioned all the different levels at AAA and everything. Like back when I played, we called that AA, right? But now they call it AAA, charge exorbitant amount of tuition, and
sure.
And not all to the full. The organizations do it because they can, right? Because a lot of players and parents, they're constantly, oh no, got to be AAA, got to AAA, got to be AAA, and they're willing to pay for it, right? So the organization's like, all right, well, hey, give them AAA and let them pay for it. And an interesting thing, I was just talking to a buddy of mine, and an interesting thing so you mentioned the expansion and how the tier 3 or the tuition leagues, they're expanding at a rampant rate, more so than, the tuition free tier 2, which expands, more so than, the USHL, which expands more, or the USHL and CHL. But now, so what's interesting is how much it all comes down to the recruiting, right? So theoretically, the problem's not necessarily expansion, but it's a very tall order, because in order for the expansion to work, you need to be a recruiting animal. You need, like, theoretically, the NA3 could be could be very consistent all throughout and be a good caliber of hockey, if they could figure out how to out-recruit the EHL and the USPHL for all the top kids. And same thing vice versa, right? The USPHL wouldn't really have a problem if they could figure out how to get all the high-end guys from the NA3 to come into their model, right? So the expansion at these levels, it's more of like a turf war between these bottom levels. It's more of a turf war between these, between these tuition leagues, and they're all trying to win that war. But again, extremely tall task, probably almost near impossible, but theoretically could be done.
Well, the problem you have with that is there is a statute of limitations. There are only so many good hockey players out there. At a certain point, you do reach a scarcity factor. You're going and bringing AA kids in and masquerading them as junior players. You reach a point of that. You think about it, this is not like other sports. This is not like football, where I can take an, in quotes, great athlete at 16, 17 years old and make them into certain positions in football. You have like the fella playing for the Eagles, all right? A lineman. He played rugby league most of his life. Then he came here and played college football, but he picked up the game late. Basketball, you see some guys come in a little bit late, that pick up basketball. Even in baseball, once Bo Jackson, contrary to popular opinion, is not a big baseball player. He really wasn't. He was a great athlete that picked up baseball a little bit more, paid more attention to it. You can't do that in hockey. It's a specialized skill sport. You can't do like in football. A Nigerian fella, Christian Okoye, who came in and led the AFC in rushing after never seeing an American football in his life till he was 18 years old. We don't have that sport. We don't have infinite expansion of athletes. So there is a statute of limitations. Also, junior hockey is a difficult time in the recruiting battle. Convincing a guy to look, as an advisor, I'm judging a league as well as a coach in a program. And for you to come in and be a Johnny-come-lately league and say, all right, send your client to us. Why should I? I'm going to send him where there's a track record. I'm going to send him where I feel confident he's going to develop. The toughest levels of hockey to develop credible new leagues are junior hockey and college hockey. Professional hockey isn't that hard. Professional hockey is easy. You just throw money at players, and you get all the quality players you want if you're willing to throw enough money at them. And you can create a situation like that. Here you can't do that. You're not going to go out and pay players. How do you convince them to come to your program? There's a program playing in a league that has no track record. It doesn't matter how good you are. Your league stinks. So it's something that, again, to go out and do that massive, get all the good players, it's hard. You have to have some sort of strong reason for players to go there. And
that goes back to what what I was saying earlier, like where, I'd like to see things put in place to try to make players choose, hey, I want to play in this league over that other league, or I want to play in that other league over this league. I would like to see things put in place to elevate the players' experience and what they get versus, hey, don't go play there or else.
It's hard to do that. How are you going to, it's not the greatest level of hockey. You don't have the money. You can't do things. Certainly don't have the money, a budget to go out and do something like training rooms and stuff like that. You don't have millions of dollars here. So you can't sit there
neither does your competition, right? You're playing at level, level playing fields for the most part.
No, but you're having to battle again. That's the point, level playing field. It's hard to offer something special or different. And also, given that you always have a variance of programs in any league, even the National Hockey League. Hey, there are some teams that some players would rather not play for in the NHL. You always have a divergence of caliber. However, when you get to a certain league where you have a real level difference and a budget, it's usually a budgetary difference. What separates major junior from the USHL? We have a lot more money in the USHL. What separates the USHL from other junior leagues in this country? They have a lot more money than other junior leagues in this country. And so it all comes down to dollars and cents. And even the NAHL, they have a structure built up in the NCDC, the non-tuition, a structure built up that labels non-tuition. Once you get to tuition hockey, it's hard for you as a league say, okay, we're all going to do this all on one page. We're all going to be quality organizations. There are always going to be weaklings, and the weaklings another league's going to prey on, and it only makes sense. It's like any predator. You pick the weakest one in the herd and you attack it, and something that's in the end. It's something that's a very predatory situation. And no league is going to, unless you had some league that's centrally owned that would lose a lot of money, incidentally, you'd have to have a centrally owned league that really has control over quality, control over every team. And you really don't have that. You're going to have bad owners, good owners. There's some markets. Some kids just going to say, I don't want to play in that town. I'm not interested. Or I'm not going to get exposure to colleges in that town. Is an issue that at Tier 3, to say you can develop a quality Tier 3 league, it's hard. It's hard to develop any quality junior league. And in the end, the real issue though isn't even really the NA3. That's not the issue. Remember, what NA3 is part of is creating some revenue for the NA. A lot of these teams, they don't care about their NA3 team. They care about the revenue it's going to generate it's like elite teams, in 18s and 16s and 15s. They really care about those teams. No, they don't. They generate revenue for the premier team. And that's what it's all about, is generating revenue for the premier team. How are they scholarship guys, and use cut rates, and we all know it happens at various levels of youth hockey. Well, it's the elite team that's footing the bill for that. How do they offer tuition-free hockey? It's the youth program, the NA3 team, that's footing the bill in part for that. So they're sitting there and they're concerned about a revenue stream. The quality of play is not the issue. The issue is a revenue stream. And also remember, for even NA3, they have tryouts. They want to have kids show up and pay to come to tryouts. So, if you suddenly have less kids because they're going to another league for tryouts, you're losing revenue. It's all a revenue thing.
Every little bit makes a difference. And listen, the biggest thing for all this that, every player needs to, understand is like I say all the time, performance is king. Get your performance to a super high level and you don't have to worry about any of this, right? Be a guy that is a top performer, that teams across every league want. And you know what? If you play your cards right and you really do this the right way, you go play for Bill and Kitchener and you don't have to worry about any of this, which is, so stay focused on what the actual goal is. A lot of this stuff is distraction. Trust me, Bill, I've talked about this stuff so much this week. Like, I'm sick of it. I'm sick of this topic. But it was major news in the junior hockey world, and stuff that affects a lot of, I say affects a lot of people, stuff that people are very concerned about and everything. So, but the biggest thing is everyone's really just got to stay focused on number one, which is your goals and progressing through the hockey world, your skill development and your performance. Performance is king. Hop into Discord. Let us know what you think. The discussion always continues in the Discord. You can get there from the description or from the link in the description of this episode. And I will see a lot of you guys on April 7th for the junior hockey session in the Discord. And Bill, thanks again for coming on.
Anytime.
So, and until next time, guys, I will see you soon.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Swan Hockey Podcast. We remind you that season pass points are available to listeners. For more information, please visit www.swanhockey.io. Until next time.